Welcome to the 7th episode of Reasonable Arguments, News, and Nonsense. You are here with Jamie Miller and Jennifer Bash. We are husband and wife
I'm the husband.
who talk about things that we're going to share with you, I guess.
Yeah.
As always, we are unfiltered and unedited. So what you hear is what you get.
Threw you for a curveball. The reason why we're not on video, ladies and gentlemen, is because of the number of faces Jennifer makes during the podcast. Words me.
Yes,
And
that is true.
And some of them are actually very cute.
Oh, thank
Yeah.
you. Thank
But that one was not.
That one was
No.
Neither was your joke.
Yeah. Well, at least it was in the category of joke.
Was it?
Yeah.
Oh, we're going to go there?
No, I'm just saying we kind of ended the last podcast with a but
Yeah. Well,
so I guess it's good we started with one too.
Yeah.
So
yeah, the last episode didn't have great content either. So let's hope today's better.
I've got a couple of things that, first of all, the pomp and circumstance of a president dying. President Carter died last week and is lying in state at the U.S. Capitol. And that's always kind of a surreal moment. And while he is now the second worst president in the last 100 years behind Joe Biden, it might be apropos that California is on fire because Jimmy Carter left our country on fire before Ronald Reagan took over. So it's the similarity between the transition of Jimmy Carter to Ronald Reagan with the fire the crop storm that Joe Biden is leaving Donald Trump at, this being the worst president of the last 100 years, now handing it off to Donald Trump in just 2 weeks. So, and Joe Biden's doing his best to not only literally burn down California, but stumble and bumble his way out of the White House, creating almost what you could call anti-American, executive orders. He's waiting till the last minute, and all of it's politics. None of this is going to be things that stick. And your eyes are starting to glaze over. Have you heard of any of these things that
I have heard of this, but it kind of makes me laugh because I remember one time when I was planning on leaving a job and I was hiring people, and I hired someone purposely because I figured, you know what, I'm leaving the job, and I didn't care for the person who I was my leader. And I'm like, you know what?
Let them
screw it. I'm going to let you deal with it. And then I ended up staying and having to deal with this person.
Oh, so, well,
yeah.
Well, Joe Biden's not going to stay.
No.
So he is out.
Yeah.
And
he's been out for a while.
Yeah, he's been out for, I think, the entire 4 years. So I think history will show that he was not in control of very much over the last 4 years.
Well, I think, I think you and I had this conversation a while back about, his legacy and what his legacy is going to look like. And I remember saying to you, coming from someone who isn't political, all I'm going to remember him for is when he was falling down the steps, when he was bumbling his words. I can't tell you a single thing that Joe Biden did, and I'm not saying...
So you're not going to remember inflation.
Oh, well, I mean, that kind of stuff, yes. But I mean, as far as him as a leader, let's say, in that
the withdrawal.
Jamie, you're being literal again. I'm saying when I hear Joe Biden, that is what I'm going to think of immediately.
Just a bumbling presidency.
But then also, I feel bad because he is truly an aging man that has issues that is,
We've all seen this.
I don't want to say forced, but forced to be in the public eye. And it makes my heart hurt for him.
He has diminished capacity.
Yes.
And you think it's unfortunate that they have.
I do think it's unfortunate.
Wound him up and propped him up to be this
100%.
character.
And I think that's what his legacy is going to be. And that makes me sad for him.
Which begs the question, who is actually coming up with ideas like selling the border wall, the materials at the Texas-Mexico border and Arizona-New Mexico border that the Joe Biden administration is selling for pennies on the dollar, so Donald Trump can't come in and use those materials to finish building the border wall.
That's
Who's making that
insane.
decision?
And as much as they say, oh, we're going to go into this and be united and all of that stuff. I mean,
Their actions are proving otherwise.
yeah.
For
I mean,
sure.
that's just stupid. You're literally taking from the American people by doing that.
Stealing from the American people.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they're giving it to some contractor who's a Democrat in California who's getting this stuff for pennies on the dollar and then going to sell it back to the US government in 30 or 40 days at 100 times the profit.
Yeah.
Right? That's exactly what's happening. And all these folks should be thrown in jail for doing it.
Yeah.
Like they should be thrown in jail. Another issue that he's doing, and it sounds good on its face value, but it's all politics. He's signed an executive order to reduce the amount of nicotine in cigarettes, right? So, and we all know that cigarettes are bad. They're addictive. Nicotine is addictive, not necessarily cigarettes, but nicotine is addictive, is the addictive substance in cigarettes. And, it's only so, of course, if this were to come to be law and, next summer, all of a sudden there's 10% of nicotine and people who are buying cigarettes have to buy 10 cigarettes for the one they're smoking now. And, and supposedly Democrats are for poor people. And without a doubt, it is exponential or out of character for not character, but more minorities and poor people smoke cigarettes than other populations. And so you're basically forcing, because you're still gonna have to buy a pack of cigarettes, and the taxes on cigarettes is by the pack, not nicotine. So in a roundabout way, Joe Biden just increased taxes by tenfold on poor people and minorities by lowering the amount of nicotine in cigarettes. And I know that's a very unique way of looking at it, but I think I'm the only one who is suggesting that at this point. But the political side of it is Donald Trump. It's never going to happen because Donald Trump's going to reverse it on day one. But this is so that Democrats in 2026 can say that Donald Trump made cigarettes
more expensive,
more dangerous, Donald Trump increased the danger of cigarettes by tenfold. Right. So this is all political BS positioning, right? It's never going to become law. He's spending time, money, and effort doing it. And it's all about, we're going to have a peaceful transition of power, but they're doing every single thing politically to hinder the next president of the United States, almost to a historic nature.
That seems like a petty.
But another perfect example is the prisoners in Guantanamo Bay. They want to take them from Guantanamo Bay and put them in a prison in Nebraska, Omaha, Nebraska, a federal prison. Why are we bringing these international terrorists to U.S. soil?
What is the purpose? Why are they saying they want to do this?
I don't know. I don't even know. Like it makes no logical sense. I mean, I guess you could argue if you're going to close into the entire Guantanamo Bay prison, but that makes no sense from an international.
Do we know how many people
standpoint.
are in Guantanamo Bay?
I do not. That's a great. How many are they moving? But it's another example of the goal here is to get these prisoners to U.S. soil so they can use U.S. courts and U.S. tax dollars to gain their freedom. That's the ultimate goal of Joe Biden by doing this, is to take international terrorists, and provide them U.S. courts, U.S. attorneys, U.S. everything with our tax dollars so these terrorists can be freed at some point. That's the goal. So why is Joe Biden undermining America so much in his final 3 weeks? I don't have the answer for it.
I mean, again, Joe Biden is not running the country.
Joe Biden is not.
So who's running the country? So right now there are 15 detainees remain at Guantanamo Bay. 3 are eligible for transfer. 3 are eligible for periodic review. 7 are involved in the military commissions process, and 2 detainees have been convicted and sentenced by military commissions.
There you go. So why are we bringing international terrorists to U.S. soil? It makes no sense. The next one, this is a bit.
So it says right now that it says how much is Guantanamo per prisoner, and it's $13 million a year.
That's expensive without question.
Yeah, 13 million.
So maybe we just put them before a military tribunal, find them guilty, and they go the way of Saddam Hussein. And we save $13 million a year times 15 prisoners. And that's a good cost cutting measure. I mean, how many starving children in America could we feed with, $195 million?
Right.
I mean, I guarantee you we could feed a
Yeah,
bunch.
I think, I think the bigger picture, and like we just said, is that, we really need to figure out who's pulling the puppet strings. Who's making him do these things.
Yeah, he has no idea.
He has no idea. And for what reason? What is the reason of doing this?
Well, I think they're potentially treasonous. Like it's incredible to say that somebody within the White House is doing things to not only undermine the next president of the United States, which in itself is treasonous, but also trying to undermine the fabric of the United States, which they've done for 4 years. And so, with in particular, the southern border and the tens of millions of people they've allowed to cross unfettered across into our country, who we know are criminals, we know are terrorists, we know a lot of them. And now, and of course, there's 300,000 children who came by themselves. And more than 300,000 children came by themselves, but 300,000 of the children who came by themselves, our government doesn't even know where they are. And our Department of Homeland Security says they're probably enslaved or being sex trafficked.
Yeah.
I mean, how does any of that make sense? Like you kind of hope it's not too little too late almost.
Right.
And I don't think it is. Me, I'm a glass half full type of person. I'm optimistic. I always think that we are stronger than any one person and that we'll survive, any presidency, including Joe Biden's. But it certainly seems he's bound and determined in these last 2 weeks to, they're talking about giving preemptive pardons to people like Liz Cheney, who sat on the January 6th committee, because they know they lied. They know they committed perjury. They know they did all these things against these January 6th prisoners. And so now they're openly talking about giving them, quote, a preemptive pardon, which would be, I think, the first in U.S. history. It's like, oh, you just get pardoned for what you may have done, even though you haven't yet been accused or prosecuted or indicted of a crime.
Right.
And yet here on the political side again, they're bound and determined, it's before the U.S. Supreme Court now, to sentence Donald Trump on this Friday, January 10th.
Yeah.
And we know for a fact that making those number of allegations a felony is just not true. They're like, oh, well, there's so many of them, it has to be a felony, is basically what their claim is. Mm-hmm. And we know that that they're bookkeeping, issues, not any type of felonious activity. And yet they gathered it together, used, New York tax dollars to the tens or hundreds of millions of dollars to politically persecute and prosecute this president of the former president of the United States, now president-elect. And they're so political that they're bound and determined to sentence him prior to him becoming president, just so they have the talking point on January 20th that he's the first convicted felon to be inaugurated president of the United States.
Right.
Just so they have the talking point. Just like Nancy Pelosi's like, oh, you're the first twice impeached president, because they did that bullshit impeachment after January 6th, right? And they ran that through it. They can't, Nancy Pelosi couldn't do anything in 10 days, but she could impeach a president of the United States in less than 10 days, right? But right. She could gather everybody together and get that done. But anything important that the American people needed, no, that's going to take years and years. Closing the U.S. border, no, that's going to take decades to figure out. But we can do this. If it's political, we can do it. So this makes no sense. The next thing, and, a lot of people would think, oh, this is a good thing, right? He signed banning drilling and mining of oil and natural gas on federal lands. And so now we are in Florida, and Floridians are very protective of drilling for oil off our coast. It's funny, I did an interview with, I think it was the Houston Chronicle. And they're like, why are so many Floridians? Texans are happy to have oil drilling off their coast. I'm like, well, look at the amount of the economy for Texas. Oil is of the economy of Texas. And Florida's economy is tourism. Two totally different economies. And so we have to protect the pristine beaches on our shore. And we know if we put oil rigs off our shore, that it's going to take away that pristineness of our beaches. And so, so Floridians, as a general rule, oppose, both in the Atlantic and in the Gulf of Mexico, drilling off of our shores. And so, but this has to do with drilling out in the middle of nowhere, Alaska.
Yeah.
Like in the middle of nowhere, no homes, no, just out in the middle of nowhere. And, why aren't we drilling for oil and natural gas there? That's the reason why we have that land. These aren't national parks. These aren't, these are just federally owned lands. And so, of course we should be drilling for oil there. And it's going to get reversed on January 20th, but it's just another political point that, they're going to say that Donald Trump, turned his back on the green economy, turned his back, they're praying and hoping that if they doubled down on their progressiveness, that by 2026 and certainly by 2028, that the politics catches up to them. And they don't realize that American people turn their backs on their politics.
Right.
I mean, they've completely rejected the politics of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. I mean, any Republican, Donald Trump won. Any Republican, I think, would have won, because people are just like, you just went too far on so many things. And we've talked about that in other podcasts.
Right.
Any questions? I know I'm railing. You're actually doing well making eye contact.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
it's
you.
not
Yeah.
quite. You haven't
my
reached
eyes are still open.
You haven't reached that glazed over moment yet. That's positive. And the other one, and this is another thing where you could say, okay, maybe it's good, maybe it's bad, but at the end of the day, the long-term impact, I think, is bad, where Joe Biden signed an executive order where medical debt will no longer appear on your credit report. Now, medical debt right now isn't as important as other types of debt on your credit report, but for it not to appear at all just gives people a reason not to ever pay their medical debt.
Well, I think right now it's a year. It doesn't show up on your credit report for a year. And, I guess I feel differently about this because, being in the healthcare field for over 30 years and seeing the costs and how elevated they were, it is, in a lot of our hospitals, if you didn't have insurance, we gave you a self-pay discount of 65%. So that just tells you how inflated the money is. And granted, the insurance companies pay reasonable and customary, in your area of what everything is, it's still just a racket. It's still a racket.
Well, yeah, like I need, shoulder replacement surgery in both shoulders. And so the doctor that I was going to, and I've gotten second opinions, and the doctor that I was going to has his own surgery center. And that surgery center alone, now my deductible on the surgery was $2,500. And then the surgery center, because he refused to do it in a hospital, was another $10,000.
Right.
And so I'm like, I'm not doing that.
No.
Right. So, I suffer through that. Especially in this blizzard type conditions we're having.
We both suffer through that.
Yeah, you do. You do suffer through it with me. And so in Sarasota, the blizzard type conditions we're having here in Sarasota, Florida.
Blizzard type conditions.
Look at the wind out there. And the wind chill in Sarasota, Florida has to be nearing single digits. I mean,
You are ridiculous.
It's probably 50 degrees out. And with a brisk 16-mile-an-hour wind, what's that wind chill?
God, you are just ridiculous.
I mean, it is cold, ladies and gentlemen.
That feels like it's 55.
No, there's no way.
It's saying it right here. It's 57.
It's 57 with a 15-mile-an-hour wind.
There's a 10-mile-an-hour wind, and the feels like it's still 55 degrees.
That's not possible. It's way colder than that.
Lord help
me. And so, so putting on all these clothes is ridiculous. I don't know.
I can't. I just can't with you.
I don't know.
Listen, I'm chilly. I mean, I have layers, right? I've already told
you wanted to go to Pittsburgh in January. How
I did.
You can't even wear that many clothes.
I will tell you my message to my uncle's girlfriend today. This was honestly my my text to her. I said, so I think it's safe to say that due to inhumane weather you are all having up there, we will postpone our trip to when we won't die from being outside.
Yeah. I mean, I can't even imagine. Jennifer wanted, and I would love to go to a Steelers game. She wanted to go to the last Steelers game, and it was 12 degrees with
Yeah, it was
19
probably
degrees.
worse than that.
And I asked her, and I said, of course, they probably have those little propane heaters like up near the restaurants and stuff. And she's like, no. I was like, what? There's not even heaters like up.
There may be now that it's Acrisure or whatever it's called. They may have heaters now, but they didn't back in the day.
I can't even imagine living like an animal. Like
True
that.
Steeler fans didn't need that because you were so hyped up about.
I'm a true Steelers fan, but it's great to
probably normally drunk. I mean, it just.
Yeah, I did threaten Jennifer. I was like, if you take me to a Steelers game like that, I'm going to be the guy with no shirt on. I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to do it.
I can promise you don't even walk around here shirtless when it's this wet. You sleep in a long sleeve shirt, for God's sake.
It's
You're
chilly.
So
I get really chilly, but
yeah,
but I was going to bite the bullet on that.
So
I was going to bite the bullet on that. So did we talk about the LA fires?
We did not.
Oh, I did talk about Jimmy Carter and the world burning down.
Yes, you did mention that. Was a horrible analogy, but
it's correct. I mean, I think it's a good one. I'll stand by it.
Okay.
You know, the world is burning, and Jimmy Carter lies.
It's horrible to see what these people are dealing with. It's just, God, I can't even imagine.
It is horrible. And, you know, one of the things, of course, the LA mayor is on an international junket. Did you know this?
No.
The mayor, not the governor. The mayor of Los Angeles is at the swearing in of the Ghana president.
Is the mayor higher than the governor?
No.
Oh, well, then what difference does it make?
Why in the world would taxpayers pay for a mayor to go to be...
Maybe it's a personal trip.
I promise you she's using tax dollars. Are you kidding me? No way. But the point is she's not back to take care of the fires.
Would you come back? What is she going to do?
Well, she could govern. She could try to help.
Well, she's a mayor.
Okay, so she's a mayor of... what, the largest city in the United States or second largest city in the United States? Let's call it top 3, you know, just because I don't have the population or land mass in front of me. And shouldn't she be there helping govern the fire departments and governing the coordination of state and federal assets?
They need her. I think they've done this enough times that they know how to handle it.
They obviously
you can't stop the winds. It's the winds that's making everything horrible. You have these 50, 80 mile an hour winds.
And so
how do you control them?
And now Trump has been railing for years against Governor Newsom about how they take water from Northern California, just dump it in the Pacific instead of letting it come to Southern California, and to save a single fish. Potentially save a single fish. And now all the fire hydrants are out of water. There's no water to fight the fire.
Oh, I did not hear that.
Yeah, the fire hydrants are out of water. So there's no water to fight the fire.
God.
And so it's just grab your heels, bend over, and kiss your goodbye, if you're in Southern California. And so, no, they don't know what they're doing over there. They have mismanaged themselves out of existence. And it was funny because I saw somebody who literally on Twitter, they're filming and saying, hey, I'm evacuating my house, you know, and there's, you know, we're overstaffed or all these things. And why can't we get our stuff together and do this? And I'm like, there's no government in California that's they call the government understaffed. I was like, there's no government in California that's understaffed. They misappropriated their staff where they're all in management getting high salaries and they never leave their desk and actually go do a job, but they're certainly not understaffed. And so
they all have always mismanaged their money.
They have mismanaged their money.
When I was in healthcare, I remember we dealt with California Medicaid, and it was when Arnold was in office and they were closing state parks because they were running out of toilet paper. So they were closing state parks on weekends to keep people out so they wouldn't run out of toilet paper because they couldn't afford to buy any. True story. And that's exactly the time when he found out he had an illegitimate kid. And so I kind of, my conspiracy theories, I'm like, oh, he needs to pay for his kid.
Yeah.
So now he's shutting down state parks. Do mayors get paid?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. They should get paid. I don't have a problem with them getting paid. I just have a problem with them taking international extravagant trips.
Maybe her flight was canceled on the way back. Maybe she can't get back. You're like you
No
said, you always
way.
think positive and give benefit of the doubt and whatever.
Nowhere. No way. She shouldn't be there in the first place.
No.
She shouldn't be there.
It's a horrible, horrible thing what those people are going through.
So yeah, so those are my news events for today.
Okay.
I could come up with more, but it's mostly the fire. You want to talk about the fires more? It's very unfortunate. You know, we woke up this morning and you know, all the news stations are showing these houses on the Pacific Coast Highway just burning to the ground, $10 million homes, homes up in the Hollywood Hills, I think. And,
well, we were watching the news this morning when the power pole fell over.
Oh yeah, that
like
was
right
crazy.
right by the newscaster, and had it fallen the other way could have changed the news story.
It really could have. It's a scary situation, and you know, it is Steve Guttenberg, the police academy actor, lives in where this fire is, Palisades. And so, and he got on radio and he's yelling at everybody. And he made a good point. He's like, if you leave your car, leave your keys in it so the police can come and take your car out of the road, because people are still trying to get out of there. And now the road is clogged with abandoned vehicles. Now, I suspect some of those are electric vehicles that just ran out of juice, right? But that story will never be told. But if in fact it's true, so
aren't they blowing up too? I mean,
I'm sure they're catching on fire at this point. You know, it's all
just adding.
It's all adds fuel to the fire.
Look at you!
I got a smile out of her, ladies and gentlemen. Look at that. Was kind of
impressive.
Look at that. So, Jennifer, I know everybody listens to the end to make sure they hear Jennifer's stories and quips.
Yeah. So one of the things that I always watch Candace Owen, because I know you don't care for her, but I always watch her.
I actually met her when she was out here in Lakewood Ranch.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So she was talking today about H-1B.
Okay.
And I'm assuming you know what it is, because I'm assuming you know what everything is.
No, I mean, I'm familiar.
You don't know what it is?
No, tell me about it.
Okay, so H-1B.
Sure, some people haven't heard of it, for sure.
H-1B is the program for, I don't want to say immigrants, but for people outside of the country, that was created to bring them in without a visa. But it was set up to be like the 1%. Like you had to be
engineer quality.
Yes. I mean, you had to be genius and specific and whatever. Well, it's now since opened up to, and I don't know, I don't think Elon started it. I don't know that answer, and maybe I should look that up. But I think maybe that's how he came over.
Oh, okay.
Here with it, which I could be.
So what does Candace Owen say about it?
So basically, she's saying that, well, because now what's happening is people are coming over, they're bringing in teachers, they're bringing in restaurant workers, they're bringing in, people that are taking jobs away from American people. And Elon is kind of, his tweets, he's basically just losing his mind. Yet his tweet was, the reason I'm in America, along with so many critical people who built SpaceX, Tesla, and hundreds of other companies that made America strong, is because of H-1B. Take a big step back and F yourself in the face. I will go to war on this issue, the likes of which you cannot possibly comprehend.
You may not realize this, but we've talked about this on the podcast, where we've talked about the reality of deporting, 10 or 15 million illegal immigrants and what that does to the workforce. And I think we're still taping. So we've had a cat problem here, ladies and gentlemen. And so, we're trying to get that straightened out. And then, but the truth of the matter is, I don't have the stats in front of me. I had it in the previous podcast when we spoke about it, was that we're working to put 50% of the people into college, and we really only need 20% of people to go to college.
Yeah.
And so 30% or really 60% of college graduates end being not needed. And so we end up with not having people who are in skilled trades.
Right.
The carpenter, the roofer, the air conditioning tech, the plumber, everything, all this air conditioning, all the skilled trades. And so, we end up in a situation where, so I can see where, H1B specific, if you're talking about doctors and teachers and things like that, I can see where we have those. Those are what we have.
Right.
And so, I can see like, hey, we need to dial that back.
Right. But Elon is 100% saying that the way that it's happening is fine. Everything is fine. So I think he has such a disrespect for the American people. I really, truly do. And we've talked about this. So one of the other texts that came, or tweets that came through, where someone had tweeted about Elon, and they said, are people really dumb enough to think that they can convince Elon Musk, an immigrant to the United States who has generated untold wealth and national security advantage for our economy and nation out of thin air, that high-skilled immigration is bad for Americans? Like, seriously. And they're not high-skilled. They're not. I mean, they're restaurant workers. They're things like that. It's not hot. It's not the 1% that it was supposed to be. Right. And Elon's response was, my tolerance for subtards is limited.
Yeah.
So it's
nice to know that he has, intellectual conversations on Twitter.
Yeah. So I could be ready for my stories if you are done with your part.
Oh, that's what I thought you started with, Candace Owens.
Well, no, I just brought that up, but that wasn't my fun stuff, obviously. But I mean, I'm
well, we're strapping in for the fun.
Well, no, I'm waiting for I'm waiting for the demise of Elon. I really am.
It's funny because I do think that at some point you're going to have the clash of the Titans and the president wins.
Yeah,
and
I hope.
And so if Elon's smart, he continues to operate at a high level, but not at this, what he feels is the highest level. And then, comparatively, Elon Musk, I think, is young compared to Trump, and, kind of continue to work with the next 4 administrations on the things he wants to do long term.
Yeah.
Because he can help with the things he wants. Excuse me, short term. We should have the Burke button here, but shouldn't have it afternoon orange juice.
All right. So here's my story. So I don't know if you've heard this, but there is a fugitive running New Orleans, and he's scruffy. He's gaining fame.
So you're calling the mayor of New Orleans a fugitive? No.
Ridiculous. So
a fugitive is free in New Orleans.
A fugitive is free in New Orleans. He's gaining fame as he outwits his tenacious band of citizens armed with night vision binoculars, nets, and a tranquilizer rifle. So we are talking about Scrim, who is a 17-pound mutt that is mostly terrier. And he has become a folk hero. Like, people are getting tattoos, they're getting T-shirts.
Let's start a cryptocurrency.
Yeah, there's even a song that's written from him. So Scrim's backstory, as like any other anti-hero, right, is he was rescued from a semi-feral life at a trailer park and adopted from a shelter. He then broke loose in April and scurried around the city until he was cornered in October. He was brought to a new home. Weeks later, he had enough, and Scrim leaped out a second-story window, a desperate act recorded in a now viral video. Since then, despite a stream of daily sightings, he's roamed free. So the dog's fans include Myra and Steve Foster, who wrote Ode to Scrim to the tune of Ricky Nelson's 1961 hit, I'm a Traveling Man. Leading the recapture effort her name is Michelle Cherami, and I'm sorry if I don't pronounce that right. She's a 55-year-old former information technology professor. She lost everything after Hurricane Katrina, her home, car, possessions, everything. But she found her calling in rescuing pets. Sounds like me, right? So since that, she's launched Zeus's Rescue, which is a nonprofit shelter that now averages 600 cat and dog adoptions a year and offers free pet food to anyone who needs it. So she helped Scrim find the home he escaped from. And it was her window that he leaped from in November. The dog initially appeared content indoors, sitting on her lap and napping beside her in bed. And then when she was out one day, and she says later in the interview that she was only gone for 15 minutes, that he chewed through a mesh screen and then dropped 13 feet to the ground, squeezed through a gap in the fence, and ran. He was gone. So she has resumed her relentless mission since then, posting flyers, telephone poles, logging social media. She even has a network of volunteers who roam the streets at like 3 a.m. in the morning to look for him. So she actually took a course. She's invested thousands of dollars on wildlife cameras, thermal sensors, and other gear. She took a course offered by the San Diego Zoo on the finer points of tranquilizing animals. So
when's the last appearance of this dog?
It's still ongoing.
Oh, okay.
It's still ongoing. He still hasn't been caught.
So he's not been
no. No, he's still up. So, and then there's a neighbor, Tammy Murray, who had to close her furniture store because she'd lost her father to Parkinson's, and she said this search got her mojo back. So she said, literally for months, I've done nothing but hunt this dog. She goes, I feel like Wile E. Coyote on a daily basis with him. So she drives the Zeus's rescue van towards reported sightings of him every night. And she handles a tactical net launcher, which looks like an oversized flashlight, and once misfired, which she actually did one time and shattered the van's window as the dog ran away. But apparently, Scrim has come to recognize the sound of the van because it's a diesel. So she has now switched up to a Vespa to be a little more stealthy. And so he doesn't recognize the sound. But that has not helped.
Proven successful either.
Right. So near misses have been tantalizing. The search party spotted Scrim napping beneath an elevated house, wrapped in construction netting around the perimeter, but an overeager volunteer broke ranks and dashed forward, leaving an opening Scrim slipped right through. So his repeated escapades have prompted near daily local media coverage and devoted online following. And then she says, Sheremy says, we're all running from something or to something. He's doing that too. So they're still on the lookout for him, but he obviously does not want to be caught. He doesn't want to be a house dog.
Just enjoying his fame.
And enjoying his life. So, and then my second story is, did you know that that scientists are doing research on fossilized dinosaur feces and vomit to help reconstruct where they came from? So they're going through the samples and to kind of find out who was eating whom, like 200 million years ago, right? So they actually, I guess they come out in like rocks. And I don't know how they determined that that's what the feces or vomit is. But they said the first dinosaurs were go-getters. They were eating whatever they could, including insects, fish, and plants. But then when the climate conditions changed, they were quick to adapt.
Probably human caused climate change.
Yeah, human climate change, right? The Paris climate adaptation or whatever. I was listening somewhat. Yeah. They started plant-eating dinosaurs came. So they were able to eat a variety of greens and vegetations at the time since their weather conditions were a little bit different. But since the study's findings were only limited to Polish fossils, they would like to see if they could, research the fossils from around the world to see what was going on. So with that, it leads me to my final thing.
We get four today, ladies and gentlemen.
What do you call
bonus coverage?
Anxious dinosaurs.
What do you call anxious dinosaurs?
Yes.
Anxious dinosaurs.
Yes.
Nervosaurus?
Nervous Rex.
Nervous Rex. That's close. I was close on that one. I'm horrible at those things. I'm horrible.
Yeah, you are. They fall short on you, definitely.
But you enjoy getting me with it. So.
I do. I love dad jokes.
Are you going to tell your joke about the surface fire now that you have everybody's attention?
No, we'll do that another time.
Oh, you're going to have to wait on that.
Yeah, we'll do that another time. But that is all I have for today.
That's all I have. I mean, we could go into a lot more. We are just, I know you're going to be excited about this. We are just about 42 days from when pitchers and catchers report for spring training. So the baseball season is upon us in very short order. So I'll keep you guys updated
I
on
hope the
when
wind chill slows down.
pitchers and catchers report.
I guess they're all used to it though, because they're mainly from the north. But I really hope they don't come down here and freeze like you do.
They would today. Yeah, I mean it's pretty incredibly cold. I mean, the other night, ladies and gentlemen, we actually built a fire inside the house, and we didn't turn the air conditioning down, and we didn't open up the windows.
No, and I will
Because that's
say
something we have to do sometimes to keep it cold enough in the house to have the fire.
the heat pump, because we don't have furnaces down here for those
Yeah.
up north who don't know that. I did not know that when I first moved down here, but we have heat pumps, and ours is on and set at 68. So it's still a little chilly.
Well, that's an interesting thing because Donald Trump was talking about how much electricity we're going to need. And if you're listen or you read the blog on Reasonable Arguments on Substack, or we've talked about it here, how much, in the next 5 years, we're going to have to create 30% more electricity just for artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
Forget about what the electric vehicle mandate was going to be. That's gone, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. That'll be gone January 20th. But Donald Trump was talking about it, and he was talking about, of course, we need, natural gas heaters, because one of the interesting things, while in Florida, electric heat pumps are really efficient. They run on efficiently on electricity, but as a general rule, they only warm the outside air 20, 22 degrees,
Right.
something like that. So if it's 48 degrees, if it gets cold, like we're facing this particular 72 hours here in Sarasota, Florida, I mean, it's a misery here. We're hope to survive it.
Oh.
And, the heat coming out of the furnace or the heat strips is about 70 degrees. Where if you have a gas furnace, it comes out at 100 or 110 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So it warms up. It feels warmer in your house. It warms up.
Yeah, because
faster.
when the air blows out, it's not even warm.
It's not
Like,
even
I remember
warm. It's
growing
70
up-
degrees.
I
Yeah.
remember growing up in my grandparents' house, they had the big grates on the floor that actually kind of burned you because
Yeah.
they were so hot. And I would take, my grandfather's shirt or whatever,
Yeah, right.
and put it over my knees and sit there because I was freezing.
I
And it
think
was
I did
warm.
that when I was 9-year-old boy in Pittsburgh when we've had the winter of 77.
Yeah.
And it was so very cold with blizzard-like conditions in Pittsburgh. And so, and it's another thing, it just goes to show you another place where Democrats were tone deaf on energy policy because, they tried to take an energy policy and apply it to the entire United States. And that's just not, if you're in Chicago and you have to use one of these electric heat pumps. Now, what they don't tell you is that your heat pump includes heat strips, which are in your air handler, and it will heat up, but it takes about 3 to 4 times the amount of electricity, and is one of the most inefficient ways of heating your home. So what ends up happening is in cold climates where they've mandated electric heat pumps, people end up using the heat strips anyway. And so it ends up being a catch-22. And it's kind of like what we faced with our low flow toilets. So you can't use a 3.5 gallon flush anymore. You have to use a 1.2 gallon flush and flush it 4 times.
Okay, well, so we were going to end the show on a fun note, which was my dad joke. And
Now you're out of jokes.
Now we're not. So it's time to end the show.
I was throwing it back to you with my silence.
Time to end the show. So thank you for listening to this episode 7 of Reasonable Arguments. You can find us at reasonablearguments.com. You can find the blog and the podcast, but we are on all of the streaming platforms. So please find us, subscribe, share, download, whatever you have to do. And we will see you in a couple days, and keep your arguments reasonable and your nonsense fun. Bye.
Bye. What was the gong at the end?
That was me hitting it.